Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am really excited to have a conversation today with a longtime friend, Jolene McDonough. She is the founder of Systems Success, and she focuses on helping companies, small business owners, and entrepreneurs create sustainable profits and better lives for employees, contracted staff, and most importantly, for themselves. And as small business owners, good Lord, we need this. She is considered the visionary's visionary. She's helped numerous individuals and companies navigate the complexities that come with growth and expansion, specifically in systems, organizations, and leadership. Welcome to the show today, Jolene.
Well, thank you for having me, Felina. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited to share your story because you haven't always been a systems ninja, but I know you've been a systems ninja for many years. But take us back. Let's hear about how you came to launch your business. But first, let's go way, way back. I know that you were raised in Scottsdale, Arizona. And if folks don't know, it's a stepsister to Phoenix. No, I'm just kidding. Some would argue part of Phoenix, but Scottsdale has its own identity. So,
Yes.
So you were born in Arizona, raised in Arizona. Talk to us about some of the early decisions you made in regards to, getting into your career.
I appreciate the question. So yeah, I grew up in Scottsdale, old Scottsdale. So not the northern Scottsdale, but I knew Scottsdale when it was dirt roads, and we used to, ride our bikes in 110 degrees all around. My early career choice, I started in banking. So at 18, I started working at Arizona Bank, and I worked my way up from drive-in teller all the way up to being a manager's secretary at the time. That's what we called it. And so I was there for quite a few years and moved to Tucson, but then came back to Scottsdale. So I really learned a lot about the banking side of finance and about how banks work. And it gave me really, when I think about it, it gave me a great foundation to understand the movement of money, commercial loans, and what happens behind the scenes. At the time I can remember doing commercial loans, and the prime rate was 18%, and people were actually still, seriously.
Everyone's complaining about 5% right now.
I know, right? I just kind of go, yeah, I guess that goes along with my experience. It's like, yeah, what else you got, But yeah, that was my start in banking, and that banking actually then took me to San Diego. At 22, I decided I wanted to go get out of the heat and became a zonie in San Diego in the banking industry. So
yes, you made a wise choice there, Jolene. No, I'm not bashing.
No, I get it. I don't like the heat.
Exactly. Okay. So, and am I right? It was your father in business as well?
So my father was an attorney. He was a probate attorney. He was also a magistrate. Fenton McDonough, old time Scottsdale. There's a Fenton McDonough Day actually in honor of him. He created things like the juvenile jury, which is a jury of your peers. So if you got in trouble, like a lot of my friends used to, you had a jury of your peers to decide if what kind of penance or whatever you'd have to deal with. But he was just a real good man. He did have his own law practice, but it was a law practice based on helping people. He did here, put $1 down on my desk and I'm now your attorney. So even today, I hear from people who say your dad helped me. He was also an umpire for 35 years in Little League. So a lot of the stories come from, yeah, I remember your dad called me out on a third strike and I couldn't argue with him, so it's kind of fun to hear the perspective of my father from them. He was a good man. And he was a good man in the legal community, and he helped a lot of people.
That's awesome. He must have been sad when you said, "Hey, I'm moving to San Diego."
Well, it's funny because he told me at one point in time, he said, I never had to worry about you. I knew you'd make good choices. And so, being one of 5 kids, I guess that's okay. One less to worry about. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And interesting. And your daughter now, Haley, you've done a very good job. She's made some amazing choices as well. So it's neat to see that come full circle, and now being a grandma.
Oh, it's Mimi. I'm a Mimi.
Yes. You're like, no, we don't use that word grandma.
I know, that just feels old.
No. Okay. So let's come back to San Diego. So you moved out in the banking industry. Where did you go from there?
So when I was in the banking industry, it was obviously a corporate type of position. And I had gotten to the top of my scale at the time as working in commercial loans. I was in an office downtown for BankHal. And my boss came to me. I was working for 3 lenders. There are a total of 4 lenders, commercial lenders, all different personalities. And I was their person that had to do their loan reports. I had to do all their stuff. My boss came to me and he said, you're at the top of your scale. I can't get you any more raises unless you go into training to be a loan officer. And he goes, I want you to take take some classes and figure out if that's what you want to do. So that's when I went and I signed up for accounting classes. So I thought, okay, that's where I'm going to start. So I was in accounting classes, accounting 101 and all that. And so that was my intro into the other side of the banking equation, the entrepreneurship. And that's where I met the husband of the woman that I eventually worked for at Century 21. So that's how I ended up leaving banking.
And you got snagged into real estate at that point.
So I got snagged into real estate. So one of the things that was happening in the banking industry is I was also one of the people who was doing a lot of the organizing of the events and things, because we worked for a bank that was high net worth, high income individuals. And we did a lot of events. And now, mind you, this was all a time when there was no technology. This was all manually done. So that we didn't have the technology now, but I was planning all of these events for our clients. And so that was my entree into some of the systems and the processes also of hospitality, and also being, speaking with people of all different levels of income and culture. So yes, I got snagged out of that. The husband said to me, you need to meet my wife. She's looking for somebody that is an event planner. And I thought, well, okay, fine. Well, it was for Century 21 regional office. And this is when Century 21 had a franchise, and there was like 90 Century 21 offices in San Diego County, and they had one regional office. And so I interviewed with them, and I ended up leaving and going into the regional support system for all of Century 21 in San Diego County and becoming their event coordinator. And I was with them for about 5-6 years. Mm-hmm. And so I moved up through there, event planning and handling all the awards. I planned events for 2,500 people. It was really, I learned a lot. And I also got to see the entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. I got to see another side of business that I didn't see in the banking side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because these are all individually owned, or, they may own multiple locations. These are entrepreneurs you're supporting at this point that own these brokerage. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, they're individual franchises.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. They're entrepreneurs, and they come into the regional office, and they're all different personality styles, and they'd come in and they're salespeople. They're really salespeople. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what then took you over? I know you then stepped onto the other side, the franchisee side, with Prudential for close to 20 years. What drew you into that side of the real estate business?
So while I was working at Century 21 for the regional office, obviously I was out talking with a lot of people, doing a lot of traveling. I met my future husband. My future father-in-law said, "You need to meet my son." And I'm like, "Okay, I know your son, but he has no idea who I am." So we eventually went out and did get married, and there was no way I knew that I was not going to be able to be a franchisee's wife at the time and be a franchisor employee. Yeah. So I knew as soon as we got married that I was going to need to go find a new job. Well, on our honeymoon, we got the call that my father-in-law bought out their partner and said, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, wedding is done. Now I can focus." And so that's when I went to work in the family business of a real estate company for, we had 35 agents, and I had no idea how to run a company at the time. So I jumped in the deep end, knowing that I was part of the family. And I jumped in the deep end and I swam and swam and swam. So that's how I ended up in the real estate franchisee side.
Yeah. Those accounting classes maybe came in handy at that point, huh?
The accounting classes and the knowledge. So the knowledge of what the banking industry, so what goes on at the bank and the movement of money, and then also behind the scenes of the franchisor, of the expectations of what they're looking for. So as a franchisee, I was able to understand, rather than pushing back at those people or those organizations, I was able to integrate all of those conversations into what we needed to do. So, instead of just being in sales, I took on the entire back office, and I had to navigate, EDD and all the California stuff and workers' compensation and payroll and all of those things. But I had to navigate it while I was also integrating the salespeople and integrating the sales organization. So there's that integration of it because you need it both. But I was focused on that part. And then, my husband, my former husband was, handling all of the sales part. So we say if it didn't walk and talk, it was mine. If it walked and talked, it was his. So the phone system was mine, all of that technology, all that was mine.
So I want to ask, and then I know we're going to get to what you do now in your business and your transition in 2008, into your own business and stepping into system success. But I have to ask the question, Jolene. I mean, you worked with your husband for a very, very long time. Any tips for people who are maybe considering a partnership in all ways, shapes, and form in life and in business?
I love that question. I love the question. Not everybody can do that. So the tip that I would say is think about it, talk to people about it, go with your gut. Especially for us as women, we become like, "Oh, I can help you. I can help you." You just really need to know your strengths and know their strengths, come in with respect, and that it's a job to do. And the other part too, yes, we worked together for a long time. So the last 5 years we were divorced. So we still continued to build the company.
Yeah.
That's again, like what else you got, right?
Yeah.
So people, when you're working with your spouse, just like leaders, your voice is elevated. So that, and when I say your voice, it means that people are listening to you and people are hearing you. They're going to put more more on what you say and the tone of how you say it than normal. So I had to be I know I was very aware of the tone of my voice when he and I were discussing business, and we may have disagreed because people would interpret my tone of voice or our conversation as, oh my gosh, they're going to get divorced, we're going to die, right? But that wasn't the case. It was, this is business. We're having a conversation. We're discussing a difference of opinion, where then you just be aware that other people are listening and watching you, and they're going to respond based on their own experience by tone and that. So that's the same with leaders. And that's, what I talk about with leaders now is that, your voice is and your tone is elevated. So I learned that, I learned that a long time ago. So just know that people are watching you, and they're going to be listening for your tone and whether you guys are okay. And oh, now you're going to get divorced. And oh my gosh, they're arguing. There's drama. And it's like, oh, please, you know what? This is business. So just the tip that I would say, go with your gut, have some agreements going in.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. And I love the delineation. If it walks and talks, it's yours. If it doesn't walk and talk, it's mine. I like that, because seriously, I mean, right? Because you have to create those lines, I would imagine. So you're not having to run everything by each other in that case. So I want to get to system success.
Sure.
You stepped out and started that at the beginning of 2008, which was a very tumultuous time, especially in the real estate industry and money in general. What was that decision to step out of something you'd been doing for 20 years into your own thing at this point?
Well, it was time. It was time for me to leave the company. Like I said, we became former spouses. I don't like to say ex. It just sounds like a hatchet or something. But so I say my former spouse. I was ready to start something new and to take that experience. But for me to do that, I had to actually leave so that I could actually find out what my gifts and talents were. And I think intuitively I knew that. I just needed to move on. It was a horrible time, but I had somebody was going to be buying my stock. And at the very last minute, smartly on their part, they said, well, you know what, we're not going to buy your stock. And I just had to make that decision personally and professionally that, okay, I'm still going to be leaving, hire my job done. And so, they hired my job done and brought in a CFO, a strong CFO, COO to replace me. And part of it, I was supposed to stay on for a little bit and run the escrow company because we had multiple companies that we were running. But as we were sitting at the table discussing certain things, I watched how everybody turned to me to answer the question, or if the CFO, COO made a comment, my managers would turn around and look at me to see what my reaction was. And in that moment, I knew I needed to not be in the office and not be part of the company, the running of the company anymore, because people would continue to come to me or look to me for, are we okay? And what's, is she, it was 20 years. I was the queen of the company. I was the one that had their best interests at heart. So they were watching me. So I really had to go and spend a couple of years just decompressing and deciding what I wanted to do and organizing my thoughts about what it is I wanted to bring to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I met you not too long after that, back in 2010.
Oh my gosh, right.
Yeah. And you were with me in the initial inception and have been on my advisory board now for 11 years.
Oh my gosh.
I know, exactly. So it's so much fun to see what you built with system success. And I can, give a huge endorsement to the fact that, from human resources, finance, I mean, you got us going on QuickBooks, the first go around. And I came back to you recently with something like 10 years later, like, Jolene, do you remember this? And you're like,
I think so.
Yes, I have these files still. I'm like, oh my God, God bless you. So yeah, organization systems, risk management. I mean, there's so much that goes into scaling a business. And I'm the perfect example of like kind of founder syndrome where, the person that is the idea behind something new and building it isn't always the best person to, run it down to the, the goalpost, if you will. So I've learned a lot from you over the years. Talk a bit about some of the clients that you've had, over the years, types of industries you've worked with, things of that nature.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, Felina. I still remember that conversation when you told me we're sitting here having coffee.
Yes.
And I had gone to my one networking event. I said, okay, fine, I'll go. And you were the first person that I met. And then we had coffee and you said the idea of Hera Hub, and it didn't even have a name at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to play. So yeah, that was really, those were defining moments, right?
Yeah.
So some of the clients that I've worked with through the years, it's really been a lot in the real estate industry, entrepreneurship, and some of the companies have been in the process of shifting their dynamic and moving from, for example, a real estate company, massively successful, but decided to change because of the times from an REO business to a traditional real estate company brokerage. So I helped him navigate that. Other companies I worked with, they needed to combine they've been growing. And when you take on new companies and you integrate new companies into one massive business, there's a lot of different operating systems. And so I helped one of the larger real estate companies in San Diego integrate their back office tracking, their commission tracking system to one system versus 8 that had been acquired. Other ones I taught for some of the coaching companies, taught assistants. I've worked with many organizations, many real estate teams and companies, top producing teams around the country with their hiring practices and organizational practices, their job descriptions, their org chart. And most recently, and then I've also worked with other companies that are out of the real estate industry. One of them is a PR company, a PR agency that I've worked with for some time. And, we have a monthly call where we're talking about where her business is going and who she's hiring next and things like that. So I integrate a lot of the different conversations because you can talk money and you can talk hiring and you can talk, but there's also a function of what's the underlying organizational part of it. It's like behind the scenes or behind the curtain in a theater group. You've got the actors on the front of the stage generating the business and telling the story, but behind the scenes, you've got the people with the lighting, you've got people who have to get paid, you've got the accounting people, you have the people working on sound, and there's so many other different things that are going on behind the scenes that impact like they overlay and the impact, that whole cascade. Most recently, I spent about 4 years actually running a company, which was really interesting for a group of doctors for biologics. It's a distribution company, which it's a totally different business, a totally different industry, the holistic medical industry. However, it's the same. It's no different than any other business. How do you scale? How do you deliver products? How do you keep the relationship with the people? So that was a big contract that I worked on for, like I said, 4 years. And so that was really interesting. There's a learning curve of the topic, but the vehicle was the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The back office, hiring, managing, software systems integration. the same
Yep.
in any business. And you've worked with our very own Dominique Molina and the
Yeah.
National Association of Certified Tax Professionals or Coaches.
Yep.
Right. And then
Yes.
many other small businesses within our community. I want to get to something that you did recently, Jolene, because I think a lot of people will be inspired by this, hopefully, because a lot of us talk about it, but not many of us do it. You moved to Italy for a few months and worked remotely, the coast of Italy. Talk a little bit about that decision and, what that meant to you and how that technically worked too in continuing to do business. And then I want to get to this book that you're writing as well.
Sure. Well, we all went through lockdown and all of that. And I continued to work with the doctors, and I looked at where I was, and there was something that I really wanted to do. I love traveling. I traveled to Italy several times with friends and also to London, different places. But it was the what if question. It was like one night I was thinking, what if I could spend 2 months someplace? Where would I go? And it was just one of those things that went, and I just kept thinking about it. And I went, what would have to happen for that? Like, what would happen, given we were in a pandemic? It was like, well, we have to be able to travel, first of all. Number two, where would I go? And would I be by myself or with other people? What, all those things. And I just got inspired, and I thought, well, okay. So back in, I think it was 2020, early 21, at Christmas time, I started looking at places to rent in Sorrento, Italy, which is the kind of the gateway to the Amalfi Coast. And it was like, why not? What if, and why not? Why not me? And I set up the company so that I knew I could work with my existing, financial well-being clients from a distance. It didn't matter what time it was. Technology, I could get on there. You got, WhatsApp, you've got, international stuff, not a problem. But what about the distribution company? So I hired somebody to actually be on the ground here in San Diego, or not in the West Coast. So it was the same time zone. I hired somebody to actually be available to respond to clients and to give the customer service. So it didn't matter whether I was across the world or not. So I set it up. I set up the systems, put them in place so that I could be gone for however many weeks and nobody would know. You wouldn't be able to tell. I even organized somebody to stay. I even, attracted somebody to come stay at my house the entire time. So it was just one of those what ifs. And so I did. And it was interesting because in August of last year, I went in September, but in August, the doctors, the product that was being sold that we were distributing, they shut down the lab. So the doctor took it in-house. So what happened is that contract completed. So pretty much 75% of my work, basically, I didn't have to do or manage. And then I decided I'm going to go anyway. So I just had to decide, am I going to go or not? So I spent 9 weeks in an apartment on the Corso Italia in Sorrento, Italy. And I worked, I played during the day. I would hop on the bus and go do my fun things. And I have a couple of friends over there, so I would see them. I met new people through Facebook groups. And, I walked everywhere and I just became part of the community, which was really neat. 9 weeks, I worked in the evenings. So I worked, I had a little place to sit and my dining room table, and I would just work in the evenings and handle calls. And I think I was on a Zoom call with you during that time, right?
Yes.
I was doing Zoom calls, and I was like, well, where are you? I'm in Italy.
Exactly.
And it was cool. It was like, nobody, didn't matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spent 9 weeks there and really found my voice. I found a voice that I did not realize I had. And that was the Dora Jolene. My first name is Dora, and I was never using it. You know, I was like, oh my God, I really can't call me Dora from TSA to whatever. So I found my written voice, and I started using the Dora Jolene as the written voice. So.
That's awesome. And your work, so now it's led to a book you're working on, right?
Yeah. So it was really interesting because while I was there, I would write, and the response to my writing, it was like a mirror. I did not realize that people were listening and that I had something to say. And then I realized I do have something to say. I have something now to share. And then so literally all the posts, the Facebook posts, it just kept generating. And that was really an eye opener. The book I'm writing, actually, there's probably a couple of them. But the perseverance and what it took to go from that point when I said I jumped into the deep end. When I jumped in the deep end, I did not realize what it was going to take or where I would be, 30 years from then. The perseverance, the challenges, the relationships, the fun, the experiences, traveling the world, being part of different organizations and learning from people, and, the heartbreak, and the looking myself in the mirror and saying, what is it that you need to do? Or what is it that you want? And being honest about that. All of those things, I started writing about some of these things and realized, you know what? I am somebody who I needed when I was going through all those things. So through System Success, I'm here to talk to that person who's going through the stuff that I used to go through, that I healed from, that I felt challenged by, that I didn't understand what was happening when I wanted to stop the train and get off just for a minute so I could breathe. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's about. It's about talking to the person who was in the space that I was in.
Mm. I love it. And I'm excited. And you're part of the writing challenge that
yes.
we just kicked off. So
yes.
Got some good accountability around it. I'm super excited for you. And your website, I heard you say you're putting the finishing touches on it.
It is. Yeah. I would say, are they ever really done? I mean,
never.
I'm a detail person. I'll go in there and go, yeah, but we need this. It's systemsuccess.com. And there's also dorajolene.com where you can read the stories that I've written, about my name. What's Dora Jolene? What is that about? What's in a name? And so I've been writing there. I've got a few blog posts up there. So between those two, they're integrated.
Awesome. Yeah. I love that. And where is Dora the Explorer going next?
Dora the Explorer, right? Well, at least it's not dumb Dora. It's so dumb. It's like, that's old, people will understand that if they're probably.
Sorry, I couldn't resist, Jolene. I
know, of course. Well, you know what? Well, they either say, Dora the Explorer, or they sing Jolene to me. So they're both, I'm happy with me. Yeah. So Dora Jolene, hey, I won lottery. People are going to remember me. So where I'm going next, we're going to Hawaii. Okay. I know Hawaii is next with the grandkids, which that's going to be interesting. Yeah. That's with a group, but I'm hopefully planning, I'll just put this out there. I think I'm going to do Ireland and Scotland and those places maybe in 2023, or the Camino.
Okay, yeah, the Camino. Everybody's doing the Camino right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, yeah. But, I don't know. It's what if?
Yeah.
I'm asking that question. I'm waiting for the answer.
What if, why not? Absolutely.
What if and why not?
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, Jolene, thank you so much for your time. It's been really fun learning more about you, some things I didn't even know.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I know we did this like years ago, way back.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fun to have an updated one and to be a part of Hera Hub. I even up here in the Pacific Northwest, there's women up here that are connected to Hera Hub, but it doesn't matter. We're just all connected. So Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.